Baba Yaga, a Russian tale, retold by Linda Jennings, read to you by Janelle MacDonald. Long ago, on the edge of a Russian forest, there lived a little girl named Anya. Her mother died when she was very young, and for a little while Anya and her father lived alone. They were perfectly happy together in their small log hut, and so they would have been for many years to come, had not Anya's father married again. Anya's stepmother was a spiteful and cruel woman. She saw at once how much her husband loved his pretty daughter, and she became very jealous of the little girl. From then on, Anya's life was a misery. The stepmother made her do all the hard and unpleasant tasks in the house. And it was, "Do this," or "Do that," from morning till dusk, without so much as a "please" or "thank you." One day, the stepmother decided she couldn't bear the sight of her stepdaughter a moment longer. But how could she get rid of her for good? Then she remembered her sister, the terrible witch Baba Yaga, who lived in the forest. And a wicked plan began to form in her head. She called Anya to her, and for the first time ever, smiled sweetly at the little girl. "Anya," she said, "I am making a dress, but my needle has broken. I want you to go into the forest to my sister's house and ask for a new one." Now Anya knew that the only person who lived in the forest was Baba Yaga, and that anyone who visited her was never seen again. But she was too frightened of her stepmother to disobey. So she set out along the forest path with some bread and cheese tied up in a red polka-dot handkerchief. As she drew near the middle of the forest, Anya began to walk more and more slowly, for she was terribly afraid of Baba Yaga. The old witch was said to have iron teeth with which she ate her victims, and she flew through the air in a mortar and pestle. All too soon, Anna came to a clearing, and there, in the middle, stood Baba Yaga's cottage. It was an odd-looking place. It stood on two chicken legs and would move itself around so that sometimes it faced east and sometimes west. As Anya came into the clearing, it turned around to face her, and it seemed that its front windows were eyes and its door a mouth. The cottage was surrounded by a fence, and most horrible of all, the fence posts were topped with the skulls of Baba Yaga's victims. Trembling, Anya crept up to the gate and opened it. It creaked terribly, as though in pain. Anya noticed a small can of oil by the side of the gate post, and she oiled the rusty hinges. As she walked up the path, a fierce dog ran up to her, barking and snarling. Anya quickly opened the red polka-dot handkerchief and took out a piece of bread. The poor dog looked half-starved, and when Anya tossed the bread to him, he wolfed it down gratefully and let her pass. Anya tapped on the door, and it was opened by a thin, untidy-looking girl with hair all over in her face. Anya took pity on her, for she looked so miserable. "Here," said Anya, untying the handkerchief again and putting the cheese in her pocket. "Take this handkerchief to tie around your hair." Suddenly, there was a shuffling of feet, and Baba Yaga herself came into the room. She smiled horribly, showing all her sharp iron teeth. "And what can we do for you, little girl?" she asked. I've I've come to ask for a needle. Your sister sent me," replied Anya. Baba Yaga's smile grew even wider. She knew how her sister hated her stepdaughter. "You must be tired and dirty after your long journey," she said. "My servant here will prepare a bath for you. While you are waiting, sit here and weave some wool for me." Anya sat down obediently at the loom and began to weave the wool. A scraggy-looking little cat watched her. Its paw reached out to catch the woolen thread as she wove. "You look hungry, you poor little thing," said Anya. And she took the piece of cheese from out of her pocket and gave it to the cat, who gobbled it up at once. Meanwhile, Baba Yaga had shuffled out of the door and said to her servant, "Make the bath water very hot, for I intend to boil and eat this tasty-looking girl." When the servant heard this, she knew she must warn Anya. The little girl had been kind to her, and now she wanted to repay her by giving her time to escape. "Take a long time preparing my bath," said Anya, when the servant girl told her what Baba Yaga was planning. "Fetch the water in a strainer." Anya went back to her weaving, her heart beating. How was she to escape from the terrible witch? "Are you weaving, little girl?" came the witch's crackling voice through the cottage window. "Yes, Baba Yaga, I am weaving, just as you told me to," replied Anya. Baba Yaga seemed satisfied, and Anya heard her getting into her mortar and pestle and launching herself into the air. "She's gone out," thought the girl, "but who knows for how long?" The little starved cat was watching her with big, wide eyes. "Meow, little girl," she purred. "You have been kind to me, and now I will give you some good advice. Over on that chair is a towel. You will need this when you escape from Baba Yaga. She will try to stop you, but when she approaches, throw down the towel in front of her. That will delay her. She will try again, and this time you must throw down the comb from your hair. Only then will you be able to get home safely. Meow." Anya thanked the cat, snatched the towel from the back of the chair, and ran out of the door. Already she could hear the swish, swish of Baba Yaga's mortar and pestle as she flew through the air, back toward the cottage again. The dog outside opened his mouth to bark, but when he saw the nice little girl who had fed him, he closed it again and let her pass. By now, Anya could hear Baba Yaga landing in the yard. Very, very quietly, she opened the gate, and, as she had oiled it earlier, it did not squeak. Then she ran as fast as she could, away from the cottage and into the forest. Meanwhile, Baba Yaga had dismounted from the mortar. "Are you weaving, little girl?" she called. "Yes, I am weaving, Baba Yaga, as you told me to," said a little voice. But just as Baba Yaga was about to go off to see if the bath water was hot enough to boil her supper, she noticed that the figure at the loom had two black pointed ears. "Ah!" cried Baba Yaga in rage. "It isn't my sister's stepdaughter at all. It's my cat. How dare you let her escape and try to deceive me?" The cat gave her a cold stare. "Meow." "The little girl gave me a piece of cheese and spoke to me kindly," she said. "When did you ever give me so much as a dead mouse?" The witch snarled and gnashed her teeth with anger and would have kicked the cat out of the door, but the cat nimbly sprang onto the windowsill and ran off into the forest. Next, Baba Yaga took the servant girl by the scruff of the neck. "Why did you take so long to prepare the bath?" she asked. "I would have had my supper long ago, if you'd been quicker boiling the water." "The little girl gave me a red polka dot handkerchief to tie around my hair," said the servant girl. "You have never given me so much as a ruble for my labors. Why should I not help her?" Baba Yaga rushed out of the door and shouted at the dog. "You should have warned me. Why did you not bark? Then I would have known the child had run away." "Why should I have warned you?" asked the dog. "The child was good enough to feed me. You have never given me so much as a dry bone." Woof! Baba Yaga went down the path and kicked savagely at the gate. "You always creak," she said. "Why didn't you creak when the girl went out?" "Because she oiled my hinges, which you allowed to get all rusty," said the gate. Baba Yaga slammed the gate in disgust, and, jumping into her mortar, she flew up into the air. "No one escapes from Baba Yaga," she cried as she rose higher and higher above the forest until she could see all the winding paths and everything that was going on beneath her. Presently she noticed Anya far ahead, running through the trees, looking fearfully over her shoulder as she ran. "Ha ha! There you are!" cackled Baba Yaga, and she flew down through the trees until she could see the little girl quite clearly just below her. Anya could see Baba Yaga too. The witch's terrible gleaming iron teeth were gnashing and grinding. Her eyes were burning like live coals, and her mortar was now bumping along the ground just behind her. Anya remembered the little cat's words and threw the towel she had taken from Baba Yaga's cottage. Immediately a wide river appeared, and Baba Yaga was left on the farthest bank, shouting and wailing and screaming in anger. "I'll get you yet!" she cried, and off she flew back to her cottage, where she drove her herd of cattle all the way down to the river bank. She had cast a spell to make the cattle very thirsty, and it was not long before they had drunk every drop of water in the river, and Baba Yaga was on her way again, flying over the trees until she spotted Anya running ahead of her once more. Anya saw Baba Yaga coming up behind her again. "She'll surely catch me this time," she said to herself. But then she remembered the little cat's words, and, taking the comb from her hair, she threw it down behind her. Immediately a thick hedge of thorns sprang up across the path. Baba Yaga was quite unable to push her way through the hedge, although she gnawed at the wood with her strong teeth and hammered the thorn bushes with her pestle. The child had defeated her, and, with a screech of rage, "Ah!" Baba Yaga returned home to her chicken leg cottage. Anya stopped running at last. Her heart was still beating, and she was terribly tired, but she was nearly home. Her father was waiting for her outside their cottage. "Where have you been?" he cried. "I've been so worried, for your stepmother said you took a walk in the forest and got lost." Then Anya told her father what really happened.
"How foolish I've been!"
cried Anya's father.
"How could I have married a woman like that?"
And the stepmother, who had overheard everything, packed her bags and disappeared off into the forest, never to be seen again. But Anya and her father lived happily for many years in the little log hut on the edge of the forest.